tell me I drink too much, but I tell you that's just your crush that comes up when I'm having more fun than you.
Good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of Tea Time Tuesday. I'm your host, Griffin Kelton. Today, we're going to be covering the Kenyan Sunrise Black Tea. The Kenyan Sunrise Black Tea that we'll be using comes from a great online distributor, Mighty Leaf Tea. As the name indicates, this tea is from the nation of Kenya. Kenya is in Eastern Africa and produces some of the best teas from that continent. The Kenyan Sunrise Black Tea, in particular, is grown in the highlands of Kenya. I've already had our water set to boil, so the tea is ready to prepare. These are what the tea leaves look like, and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail. Let me go ahead and set up some tea to brew, though. I'm going to be preparing a 6-ounce cup of tea, so I'm going to use a half teaspoon, slightly rounded. Normally, when you brew a tea, you're going to use 1 full teaspoon, and that's because most people are going to drink 12. But for our purposes today, just for tasting, I'm going to just use half a teaspoon. My water was brewed at 205 degrees Fahrenheit, as you can notice there. And I'm going to fill up the glass as much as I can, because this ball is going to add a little bit of weight and push the water up. What's great about double-walled glasses, as is this, is that there's glass on the inside, and then there's air in between the second layer of glass. And so when I hold the glass after pouring 205 degrees Fahrenheit hot water into it, it's not going to burn my hands at all. I barely feel the heat, actually. Another great feature of double-walled glasses is that the air layer between can help reduce condensation when you pour a cold beverage into there. Either way, it's going to keep the heat or coolness into that cup. This is what it looks like. It looks like it's really flimsy. Doesn't exactly look like a glass cup, but it is. This one is made by Bodum, and it is 12 ounces. My other one is bought in a 2-pack at Tivana, and that's 6 ounces. It's produced by them independently. My tea's been set to brew for just about 4 minutes now. I'm going to take this ball of tea out. It is going to be very hot, so I'm going to place it into my double-walled glass by Bodum. As you can see, the tea liqueur here is a light amber, kind of a coppery color. And it is very hot, so I'm going to sip carefully and then tell you all what I think. I like this tea. I think up front, without thinking about it any, I'm going to give it about an 85 to 90%. So, just under 5 tea leaves out of 5. This tea is slightly astringent, which means that it's going to be on the bitter side because it is a black tea. But it's a bitterness that you learn to appreciate and that you actually really enjoy. It also has a sense of fruity flavor in it that you're going to really enjoy in the morning. Really any time of day, but especially to wake you up. Not nearly as harsh and bitter as coffee. These are the tea leaves. This tea is loose tea, as you can see here. I had to put it in the little round egg-like container to brew it. And these are rolled tea leaves, as you can see there. I'm not sure how well you can tell, but those leaves are rolled instead of crushed or diced, are finely ground, as are common in bags of tea. Smelling this, I can describe the flavor without any hesitation as a peachness, a peach fruity flavor that's tart, almost like those pieces of dried fruit leather, if you've ever had them, or even just dried peaches. It has that tartness, that lacks any sweetness really, but it's definitively peach. And I can tell that straight up by smelling the tea leaves, because the flavor in there is a lot more condensed. Whereas here, I only used half a teaspoon of tea leaves, and it's spread out across 6 ounces of water. I do really enjoy this tea. This tea is going to contain more caffeine than the other 3 teas that we have brewed so far. It's going to be on the 110 milligram side, especially if you brew it anywhere between 4 and 5 minutes, as I did. Black teas are always going to have anywhere from 60 to 110 milligrams of caffeine. The English breakfast, the Irish breakfast, and the tea that we reviewed last week, the cranberry blood orange, are more in the 80 to 90 milligram range. This is much stronger in caffeine content. Regardless, all these teas are going to have less caffeine than drip brewed coffee. Drip brewed coffee is normally going to have about 120 milligrams per 12 ounces. Starbucks coffee is going to have 240 per 12 ounces, and that's going to be a tall, not a grande, for all those coffee drinkers out there. Now, although the caffeine content in this black tea is comparable to that of drip brewed coffee, it's often accepted as scientific knowledge that the polyphenols in black tea are going to allow the tea and the caffeine in it to be absorbed slower. So although you're going to get roughly the same amount, it's going to be absorbed slower throughout your day, so it's not going to give you a quick jolt and drop you off later. It's going to be continued throughout your day. And caffeine has a lifespan in the body of about 15 hours. So that gets you going for your entire workday, or a busy day, whatever you have ahead of you. After having some time to enjoy this tea, I would give it a solid 90%. I'd also like to note that it has a very smooth finish and great aroma to it, and the peach tartness that I talked about isn't an undesirable tartness. It's not overpowering with a pucker to it. It's brisk and adds a little bit of freshness to it, giving you a very well-rounded breakfast tea. I would like to note that there are tiny little pieces of the tea in the bottom of this glass, and that's because the brewing egg that I used has small holes in it. If you'd like to prevent that when you brew, you can also buy things that have a wire mesh instead of just solid holes. There's also one more thing I would like to talk about in regard to caffeine. Caffeine is great. I always love it in my morning, and if you're someone who wants to jumpstart your day, I would definitely recommend drinking this tea. It's going to enhance your mental acuity, getting out the door, and it's also going to jumpstart your metabolism in the morning and get those digestive juices going, which is good whether or not you had any breakfast. So, I would give this tea a solid 90%. Thank you for joining me in this week's episode of Tea Time Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like any more information about the show, teas that we review, or even our ongoing contest, please join us on Facebook. A link is placed in the show notes, which are either to the right of the YouTube video or below the video on Vimeo. Tune in next week where we review a little bit more of a different kind of tea. We're going to be doing an oolong. So that can be found on YouTube or Vimeo next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Have a great night.
And I say so deep in you, you're gonna save me out now.